And without further ado, we are going to get into From UX Academy to Gamma, Alison Bemis on designing AI products. I realize there is a typo on your last name in this slide.
I actually think
I'm
it's
very sorry.
really funny, and phonetically, it's probably makes more sense.
I'm looking at it
I've
like, that's not right.
That's it's actually funny because that's not the name that's normally spelled wrong. People usually put two L's in my name, or they'll like
Mm.
put a letter, a like really surprising letter somewhere in my first name. So this was like a funny, a funny new misspelling, but I like it. Hi
So
everyone.
yeah, Allison, I know. I can relate. My name is Emily Ann and people call me Emilian all the time. So
Oh yeah,
strong.
I bet you've seen it all.
Cool. Well, I'm just going to get into a little bit of a Q&A with you, about your experience. So I know you shared with me that you were, previously working in the restaurant industry as a barista, but if you wanted to share a little bit about your background, how you became interested in UX, and how you decided to make the career shift into design, that would be great.
Yeah, so I actually have a degree in history. I took a pretty like standard path. I went to high school and then I went to college. I got my degree. And then when I was leaving school, I took this like summer, what was supposed to be a summer job at Starbucks, and discovered that I really like coffee and the service industry. I really liked sort of being part of people's like daily rituals, and just like interacting with people. And it was really nice for me to sort of have a break from like the school pace, right? I didn't want to be at a desk or like studying all the time. So what was meant to be like a summer stopgap job turned into like a little career. And I was working in coffee for several years, in a bunch of different places, a bunch of different types of shops. But I was at a shop in the Bay Area, when lockdown started. And so I, along with like thousands of other people, obviously got laid off in like the early days of lockdown. And for the first few months, I basically just took it easy because I was like, I didn't really like shops were closed. I didn't really have any other plans. And I was fortunate to like have a partner who made a salary that combined with my stimulus, like we were good, recovered. Um, and like come September, October, like yeah, September-ish, I was like, okay, I should start thinking of a job and I should maybe start thinking of leaving coffee, which is something that hadn't really occurred to me before because I really liked it. And I looked at sort of the commonalities between all of the things that I had done before because I had done like internships in college. I had my degree. Like I thought about what I liked about coffee, and what I pulled out of that is that I wanted to do something that wasn't the same day to day. So I would have sort of a diversity of experience within my role. I wanted to do something that was related to people, because the thread between all the different things that I had been interested in, between like history, coffee, was they were all sort of people focused. And the aspects that drew me to those things were really about like people's like stories. Um, and then I think those were my two sort of like North Stars when I was looking at roles. So I did sort of a dive through the internet on like what roles could sort of suit this, like meet these check boxes, because I had always had this fallback in my mind of like, I'll become a copywriter, I'll become a content writer. When I'm done with coffee, I have writing experience, like I'm a pretty good writer, but when push came to shove and I was sent a like writing challenge for a job application, I like froze and had a mental breakdown because I was like, oh, I can't do this. Like I can't do this for work. I will be miserable if I try to do this. So that was like, I have to accept this isn't for me. I'll find something else. And on the list of like suggestions or like things that I could do was UX designer. Um, and years prior, my partner, who was a software engineer, had suggested UX design as a path for me. And at the time, I was very much in the coffee world. And so I was like, nah, tech bro, like I'm not doing that. Um, but like, you know, here we are now. I realized that UX design and product design was a really good fit for me because it did fill a lot of these boxes. It was something that was intellectually stimulating, allowed me to work with people, and like I knew that no matter, my job would be like not the same day to day. I wouldn't be stuck in like old thing. Uh,
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit, Allison.
How's this?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's kind of how I decided to make the transition. I chose Design Lab just because it seemed like the most like sort of flexible option, and I really wanted the opportunity to work with a mentor. That was something a lot of other programs like didn't have, or you had to like share more. I was like, meh. And yeah, here we are.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's really interesting how speaking to so many different folks, like the amount of transferable skills from a lot of fields into UX is wild. You know, whether it's hospitality or education or healthcare, like they can be really, really diverse backgrounds, but there's so much that you can pull into UX regardless. So it's interesting. So what was your experience like in UX Academy, you know, especially as someone sort of new to UX, and what did you really enjoy about the learning experience, and how did you kind of stay motivated, especially, you know, sort of in a like a pandemic environment?
Yeah, so the thing that I really loved about UX Academy was actually like the people. So I was really fortunate to meet a lot of like great people and make some really good friends out of UX Academy. People who I'm actually still like friends with today and who I still talk to. People who I've gone to visit, who have lived near me. Like we've gone on trips together, and so I think that having this experience like really bonded us in a way that, you know, few other things like can. Um, so that was like number one. The other things that I really appreciated about UX Academy was having flexibility to like choose projects that made sense for me. Um, there's a lot of other like ways to sort of learn and like things you could do to like try to get into the industry, but having some sort of structure is something that I needed. That's why I signed up for a boot camp in the first place. I knew I couldn't do the transition without structure, but also the freedom and like flexibility to like say this makes sense for me and this doesn't was really important. So yeah, that was really helpful as well. And I had a really great mentor in the program, Janet Fu, who may be here. So shout out Janet, you're the best. And yeah, I think UX design, like product design to me is a very, hi Janet, it's a very like malleable process. It's a very malleable field. And it's something that has to like adapt to the problem that you're facing. You can't like brute force it into a mold that you think it should fit. So yeah, just having flexibility was really important to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, we hear that from a lot of folks, that the ability to be flexible, whether it's because it's just how you learn or because of your schedule, is really important, and the support is big as well. So for sure, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you're working on now. I know that later you're going to be providing a demo of Gamma, but it would be great if you could tell us a little bit more about like what Gamma does and what its specific use cases are for.
Yeah, so when I joined Gamma, it was pretty different. So I was the eighth hire and I was the second designer. They had been working on the product for maybe 6 months, and it was like a uh, pretty like rustic experience. Like it was very bare bones. There wasn't a lot there. And so at the time, the focus was really on it was on this thing called memos. So it's sort of like a communication, like productivity type tool, something between a presentation and like a doc. Um, but as time shifted, we went more into the presentation space. And when the whole AI like boom started a couple years ago, my co-founders fortunately like saw the writing on the wall. In this case, sort of a positive way, and we're like, we should add this to the product. A, because we think it can add value. We had a problem, which was the blank slate problem, like the blank page problem. And AI is like a potential way to solve it. The other reason is because, like, just sort of practically speaking, right? Like, startups need funding, they have runways, and ours was not running out, but AI was sort of a Hail Mary. The market that we were in when we launched the AI features was very different than the market we were in when we like raised our seed round. And the sort of the bar that you had to clear as a startup to get funding in that time was quite high. So
AI was this like, if this works, it's gonna like carry us, and if it doesn't, we need to like really think about what's going to happen now. So I've worked basically like, and now we're here. We have like millions of users. We're profitable. Like we're very stable and we're growing really quickly. So I've seen the company through like a lot of different phases, and I've worked on almost everything basically. So that's, if you're thinking about joining a startup, that's one advantage. You will not have a lot of structure, and you will not have necessarily like the sort of oversight, not oversight in a bad way, but you won't have as much like coaching necessarily as you would in like a bigger company, but you will have access to like opportunities that other juniors at other companies, like especially big sort of, you know, like legacy, especially companies, juniors do not touch core features like that quickly in those companies. But I was designing, launching, and iterating on like really fundamental parts of the product from basically day one. And that's something like that's very cool and very sort of unique to being a startup designer. I don't know, say sharp. So I've worked on everything. Right now, I've moved into like the growth team. So I'm focused on like helping users sort of see the real value of Gamma. We have a lot of power. We have a lot of like features and functionality that like most users just don't know about. And so my focus is how do we like bring people into the product in a way where they can finish onboarding and be like, okay, I know what's going on, and like I'm excited to keep going. And that motivates them to like keep exploring and, you know, keep trying things.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. The growth team's pretty new. Like we were all basically like one amorphous like product team blob until like 6 or 7 months ago. So it's, you know, just another like startup like milestone splitting into like a couple amorphous blobs.
No, that's awesome. So I know that you said Gamma has like generative capabilities, and you're going to kind of ask folks for a suggested prompt. Can you tell me a little bit more about like those generative things, like what exactly we would be generating, and then I can add
so the thing that people would the thing we're probably known best for is presentations, and that's where we've invested like the majority of our like time, because that is what people come to us for. So if you like need a presentation, like we can generate one. We've also added like sites capabilities. So if you want to generate like a website, then you can do that too. I think that what's really useful about Gamma is that it solves the like blank page problem. So instead of staring at like, I remember building my site in Webflow and having to like go through so many different like iterations of like the most basic, you know, like components, and just thinking about like, how do I even start making my portfolio presentation? Like, I don't know. Those are like questions that really like plagued me and like kept me up. And ultimately, they were sort of solved by Gamma because my interview process was a little bit unusual, like for most people, like timeline wise. It was very compressed. And so I had a portfolio chat on a Wednesday. And at the end of that, my now manager asked after that. And I was like, let's do the day after that. Because at the time, I didn't have a portfolio presentation ready. So I had nothing to show.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, take me all night. Yeah, it was like, I had that call from like at like 1 p.m. on a Wednesday, and like my on-site began at like 9 a.m. on a Friday. So it was like just an all out, like I must finish this thing. But I made it in Gamma, and just because of how Gamma works and sort of the editing, it's not like a drag and drop like pixel futzing thing. There are like constraints on like where you put things, how you position things. And so having that, like something that puts you closer to the final product, like as soon as possible. And also something that just like writes template content for you is really, really useful. That's what most of our users like find helpful. So that's what I think the generative AI is like best for, is like give me a template that I will like fill out and make more specific to like my needs, but like I don't want to spend all the time like writing like filler content, you know, like that's not a good use of my time. So yeah, we can basically generate anything. And
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds exceptionally useful. Like, I mean, I'm even just thinking about our UX Academy students who might be putting together like a website or a resume or a portfolio, you know, because as someone who's put together like a portfolio website, it is really overwhelming, you know, to just like
yeah, totally. It's a ton of work. It's a ton of work, but the funny thing is that once you do it, and then once you use sort of a generative AI tool, you realize how much of those patterns are like basically templates. And you're like, oh yeah, like this is something that I've seen a million times before, but you just maybe didn't like realize it.
Right. No, that totally makes sense. So last question before we move into the demo, how's it been like working specifically within the AI space? Do you feel that there are maybe unique, you know, challenges as a product designer working on an AI product?
Yeah. So there's a couple unique challenges. So I've worked on several of our AI features. So I worked on our initial AI generation capabilities. They were sort of born out of a hack day. We were like, let's have a hackathon on AI. I was really bullish on not giving new users just a big empty box. I was like, they need to have a little bit of structure around what they can create, because prompting is, once you get the hang of it, like very doable. But at that point, this is March, February 2023, like most people didn't really know what they were doing. And so if you come in and you don't know what you're doing, and because of that your output is bad, then you're not going to realize it's like a you problem. You're going to think it's an us problem, and you're never going to like come back. So I was like, how do we make it as difficult as possible to get something bad? That was basically my mentality. I've also designed most of the AI image generation features. And so I think that some of the unique considerations are, when designing for AI, is that you don't necessarily have like control over what's going to happen. You can put up a lot of barriers and sort of like bumpers, right? Like if you think about like bowling, right? You can put the bumpers up, but like someone is still inevitably going to be able to like mess up so badly that they get the ball into the gutter still. So like you just have to like prepare for that case and like make sure that like if that does happen, things don't just go like horribly awry. There are like moments of unexpected delight. We internally, this is one of my favorite Slack channels, have a channel called Bone on Hail. It's like a inside joke, but it's basically a place for us to like drop like AI nonsense. So like internally, we're very aware, like maybe more aware than most people, of how like ridiculous like AI can be, and like how like unserious and like not professional or like not usable a lot of AI output is, because we go through so much unusable stuff to like get our AI into a place where you can show it to like a real person at work. So yeah, just knowing that you're gonna get a mix of like things that you should not see the light of day, and maybe some things that are like kind of useful. And you just have to learn how to tease out the gems. There's also this like there's more of like an ethical / moral consideration. When we were first thinking about adding AI to the product, I was pretty hesitant. I was concerned, and it was important to me to advocate for us using AI and implementing AI in a way that made sense for our product, our users, and that we weren't doing it just because it was like a buzzword, that it was like serving a real purpose. And so I've this entire time been really, really like passionate and like loud about advocating for us having our AI features like serve concrete purposes and solve concrete problems that like our users are having. And so, for example, like speaker notes, right? Like generative AI can look at the content of your card and then generate like a draft of speaker notes. And that is something that is like super helpful and like super useful. It doesn't feel like a gimmick. It feels like something you would actually want in like any given like slides tool. So yeah, I think those are sort of the biggest things that are like top of mind for me usually. And then obviously there's like a whole world of AI like abuse. People request some really weird things, let me tell you.
I believe it. I believe it. But no, I mean, that makes a ton of sense that, you know, it's the ethical and moral kind of questions of it, and also making sure that it serves a really, really specific purpose. That's actually helpful for users rather than just being there to be there, you know.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing, you know, a ton about, you know, your background and kind of about Gamma. We have some questions, but we'll jump into the demo first, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, totally.
I am going to shut my camera off while you do the demo, just so that we don't like clog up Livestorm's bandwidth. But I will be here.
Yeah, so I will show you. I'll show you a couple of things. So I'll show you sort of the standard generate flow, and then I will also show you some stuff that I've made in Gamma, because I think that what Gamma can make just by default and what someone who's skilled in using the tool can make there's like a pretty big gap. And I've told my coworkers and my team, you know, I want Gamma to be able to make the kinds of things that I can make, aspirationally. Yeah, so let's see, topics. I don't think there were any in the chat, so I've been thinking about like guinea pigs a lot lately. I've been watching like a lot of cute guinea pig videos.
Love that.
Like guinea pig playgrounds. Okay, so, and this is kind of what I was talking about with the not giving you just like a big white box. I really advocated for us to like show you some kind of outline, right? Because if you think about how frustrating it is to have AI like give you the wrong thing, you're like, no, I wasn't talking about that. So just giving more like awareness checks, like making sure along the way while you generate that you're on the same page as the AI. Because if I say like, you know, give me a deck about football, am I talking about American football, or am I talking about like the rest of the world calls football like soccer, right? Or the rest of the world calls soccer football. So if you're like top 10 football players, am I going to get like a card about Messi or about like, I actually don't know any American football players. Tom Brady.
Yeah, Tom Brady.
Yeah.
That's
so like, what am I getting a card about? So yeah, just having more of those like, okay, we're on the same page. Yeah, Gamma has a bunch of themes. My coworker Melissa made most of them. You can customize them. I'm gonna go for, I feel like this is like guinea piggy. And then you just hit generate and let it do its thing. It takes like less than 30 seconds most of the time. And yeah, like now you have a pitch deck. It's great. So this is what I mean. Yeah, this is what I mean about templating, right? Like not necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily use like all of this content. If you were like an actual company, you'd want to like change the name of the company, add some stuff about like your specific like product offering. Oh my God, that's hilarious. I love that. These axes are like amazing. Okay. Anyways, yeah, like you'd have a lot of edits that you need to make, but far fewer edits than you would need to make from scratch. And so if you were to like go and present this, you know, we try to do everything we can to like make your content look good by default and reduce the amount of like futzing that you as the user have to do. So that's like the basic generate flow.
It's really impressive, honestly.
Yeah, we've worked a lot on it. Let me show you a couple of things that I've made. So this is, I don't have an actual portfolio anymore because I don't have time for that. But this is sort of like a splash page I made for myself in Gamma. So this is made in Gamma, published through Gamma. Let's see if I can find it. I'll let that go in the background. So this is like all Gamma, and I can show you a couple of things that I made. So this is a site I made for my dog. He's nuts, but he's really funny looking. There's like photos and just like layouts that make it like pretty easy. The thing is like I have a lot of fun making things in Gamma. And so I'll just like make stuff if I feel like it. This is a presentation I gave. Oh, we have this really fun ritual. Every Friday, someone gives a presentation on something, just whatever they want. So I've given a lot of these just because I'm a yapper. But this is one I gave a couple years ago about this story I heard in college. It's about this like sad rhinoceros story. But it I think looks really nice. This was sort of one of the earlier things that I made where I was like, oh wow, like you can make something that a presentation that like looks really good and like really like a typical just like PowerPoint type thing in Gamma. And this is the editor experience. So there's a bit of, it's not quite like WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, but again, we try to make it as things look as good as possible by default. And then the latest like Gammarama that I gave is about T-Pain. I've talked about him a lot over the years and had never actually made a presentation about him. And so I finally gave, this is a progress bar at the bottom, so it shows you like how many cards there are in the presentation. As you can see, there's a lot here, but here, I'll just get to here. For like years, one of my on one of my like taglines or whatever has been like T-Pain enthusiast. So I was like, it's finally time. But
this is really cool.
But again, it's just it's about making it possible to like make these like visually engaging, like sort of a little bit more interactive, like multimedia rich like artifacts without all of like the fuss. And yeah, honestly, it's pretty fun, like to just make presentations about things that you're interested in. But if you've used Yogen, then you'll be familiar with some of Gamma's like UX patterns. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else anyone's interested in seeing?
Yeah, feel free to put stuff in the chat. We also have some questions, so we can jump into there.
Oh yeah, we can do questions, and if someone has one that involves screen sharing, I can just.
Cool. So Kimmy asked, do you work with the system prompting at all?
Like the prompting in the code, I do not have like hands-on with that. I have coworkers who are better with that stuff. They tend to, like, I usually will describe what it should do and they can write prompts that get it to do that. I have written prompts before. So I think that my tips are to be like very clear about, write in like the clearest language you can and like the simplest language you can. And I would say start with like don't worry about having like a really concise prompt at the start. So one of the prompts that I worked on a lot this was with image editing. So we were getting a lot of feedback about our AI images being bad. Or we're getting a lot of bad feedback about our AI images. Not that all of them were bad, but it was sort of similar feedback on similar types of images. So a lot of the images that were getting these ratings had really short prompts and really vague prompts. So like the prompt might be like employee attrition, and it's like, what's the visual that goes with that? Like really hard to say, because if you say something like soccer ball, then make a soccer ball. But if you say employee attrition, it's like, it's a little fuzzier. So what I did was I wrote a prompt that evaluated the prompts that the user had sent based on criteria that I gave it. And if it was good, then don't do anything to prompt. If it was bad, then try write a new one that fits that criteria, but is still related to that subject. So if you get employee attrition, then it will rate it bad, and then say like the rewritten prompt would be something like a like sad employee like leaving an empty office, like, you know, dim lighting or something. So just stuff like that. I think start with the longer version, just sort of brain dump. And I think you just have to be willing to like refine things until they do what you want. There's a lot of like fussing over words. But once you're getting like a consistent output, I think see if there's anything you can remove, and still get that same like quality that you're looking for. And then if it drops, add that thing back. So it's sort of like a science experiment. I wasn't really good at science at school, so I actually don't know if it is. Scientists, please correct me. But yeah, you just have to be willing to like really, really iterate.
Cool. What LLM does Gamma use?
We use like a mix. There's like quite a few things that we test with. I actually am not sure anymore what the primary one is, but we have used Anthropic and we've used OpenAI in the past.
Cool. What are some of the things we can do now to work with AI once we enter the industry, like topics we can learn from, resources, etc.?
Okay, so I think there's a couple of things here. One is that anyone who's like, I'm an AI expert, they're like kind of full of it, because AI is like really new. So there are actually not established like best practices or patterns in AI yet. They're being
Oh, I can't hear you, Allison. I think we lost you for a second.
One second.
Now I think you're back.
My phone, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Become my microphone, and I like don't.
That's
want
so
it to
weird.
ever. I don't know why. It's just started happening today. Okay, but if we're good, yeah. So where was I? I think. Oh yeah. So AI is like such an emerging like space that there aren't really like best practices in the way that there are for like fintech or like healthcare or something like that. These like really like very long standing fields. So chat is definitely a pattern that has emerged, and whether or not it's like the best way to interact with AI sort of remains to be seen, but it is a really good way to get people like through the door. The other thing to sort of be like have in your mind as you're like working with AI, thinking about AI, is that people's level of familiarity and level of competence with AI will grow as time happens. So right now, the things that work and that make sense aren't necessarily things that will work and make sense in like 5 years or 10 years, because people will like know so much more about AI and how to work with it. And AI's capabilities will like grow exponentially over that time as well. Like you can already see the difference between an AI image generated today versus like 3 or 4 years ago. And I think this is something that has really come out in Gamma, where a couple years ago when we launched AI features, we had to keep it really, really simple. We had to keep our explanations like really tight and make it really, really like just, for lack of a better phrase, like dummy proof, because the people who were coming into the product had no idea how to use AI. We like only kind of knew how to use it. And we couldn't trust users to like be advanced because there were no power users of AI at the time. Like that didn't exist. Like everyone was new. But now we can do more things with it and ask more of our users, because the average like level of competence and like knowledge about AI has like grown over the years. So I think it's just like it's a very quickly evolving space, and there aren't really like standards like on how to do things. So having like a willingness to experiment and a willingness to like iterate and sort of push boundaries in like what is being done right now, I think is really helpful. In terms of like particular resources, I don't have any off the top of my head. I think just using it is like the best way. Use it for like whatever you can think of. I've been using it for I've been studying Chinese lately, and so I've been using it to help me with that. And whether or not it is giving me the correct answers is I'm not totally sure, but it's definitely helping me think through and like break down like problems that I'm having. And I think that's something useful as well. Yeah. Hopefully I
Cool.
answered that.
Yeah, no, that was a really thorough answer. Thank you. So we have a couple more questions, but before we do that, I know that you had like a discount code that you wanted to share.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to share that in the chat and just tell folks a little bit about it, because we sometimes see people start to drop off like a little bit around the 45-minute mark. So
Yeah, so I have a 1 month of free pro for everyone. So I put the code in the chat, and then I can like screen share it briefly so that if you're
yeah, that'd be great.
Let's see. All right, cool. So here it is. It's a
Awesome.
big old string of letters. But yeah, so 1 month of free pro, try it out. And Gamma is like pretty fully featured without pro, actually. Like you don't really need to pay to like get a ton of value out of it. You have like unlimited edits, like unlimited like art. You can make unlimited number of gammas or presentations. Like the manual editing in Gamma is like totally free. There aren't like limits on that. So it's just the AI like functionality for the most part. But yeah, try it out, and if you have questions.
Cool. And then I also want to share for anyone who maybe missed it at the beginning that we do have a Design Lab promo code for y'all as well, which is New Year 100. I just put it in the chat, and that is good for $100 off of any Design Lab course, any Design Lab short course. So Foundations are one of our advanced courses, Design 101. So yeah, some fun discounts and promos for y'all today. And then so we have a couple more questions. Alex wanted to know, or I'm sorry, I'm going to go in order. So what is something you wished you had known before starting to work as a UX designer?
So I think that something that I found out because when I decided to make the career transition, I went pretty deep in reading. And I think that's something that's important for all people who are trying to transition into this industry is to know that the design process is very, I said this earlier, but the design process is very malleable. So it does not, I would say, almost ever start and end at the same point. So you're typically not going to like start a project by doing a bunch of like, research and discovery like around a problem that like you chose, right? Like typically your PM or some external like other person is going to say like, hey, this is a problem that we're having, like let's do something about it. And maybe when they say let's do something about it, they have a more specific solution in mind. Maybe there's like a lot of discovery involved, or maybe it's like, hey, remember that thing we said we were going to do? Like, can you do it now? And so all of those scenarios, like they start the design process like sort of in a different spot, right? So, but almost never is it like I'm starting with my like discovery user research stuff. A lot of the time, actually, I go in kind of a reverse order almost for what you learn when you're going through like a boot camp. And so I think this is just something good to know, because once you get into the job, don't be confused or like concerned if you're not going through all the steps in the order you learned them, or if you even skip steps, because that's just kind of like how it works. But oftentimes I will start by like maybe doing some research and like problem like scoping, and like banging out a quick design, and maybe I'll show that to some people, get some feedback, iterate on it, bring it to users, ship it, see how it goes, and then iterate again. And that's pretty normal, and it's like totally fine, as long as you're, you know, iterating on your work and always trying to like improve the user experience.
Cool, thank you. Crystal wants to know, are the images in the presentation generated or are they pulled from a database?
Oh, they're all generated. Yeah. I mean, you can request like web images, but those are those are kind of funky sometimes too. But yeah, they're all generated. And so if you click on one of the images here, I'll go and show you one. So if you click on one of these images, you can see the prompt that was used to generate it. And you can see all the images from the presentation. Yeah, I mean, Gamma has a prompt. We call it prompt enhancer, prompt rater, but you can see like the content of the card is like a guinea pig playground and like small pet entertainment. So if I click this, it'll just write a prompt. And so actually, this is something maybe if you are interested in learning about AI and you're interested in like AI images, this is maybe something to like keep an eye on. Is this feature, because in theory, this should write a prompt that is like very understandable to a like image generation model, and then can output closely like what you want. So if you are having trouble like writing prompts and you're like not really sure like how to do that, you know, take a look in here, see how we put these things together. Like I actually personally designed all of this basically. And what that was one of the things that I was really focused on. I was like, how do we break prompts down into sort of comprehensible like chunks that like a normal person who's like not nerding out about AI like into the night can understand how to do, right? So yeah.
Really cool. The more question from Alex, you touched on this a little bit, but how editable are things once they've been generated, like in terms of the template?
Oh yeah, totally editable. So like the body of the card, that's what we call the slides. The body of the cards is like totally editable. AI image editing in the sense that like if you have a woman in like a blue dress, like you can't yet say like make her dress red, but it's something we're thinking about. But everything else is like editable. You can't with Gamma, you're not going to be able to like choose like a particular like XY positioning or like pixel dimensions, but it's like it's pretty flexible. You can get some pretty cool stuff out of it.
Cool. Well, awesome. I think that's most of our questions. Is there anything else that you want to share, Alison, before we wrap up?
I did see someone ask about me getting my first job. And so I did want to touch on that briefly because the way that I got my first job is like a little bit unusual, but speaks to something that a couple things that I strongly believe. So the first is that you should try to make your own luck. And the second is that you should know your unfair advantage. These are really important, I think, for people who are trying to like do a career transition. And so when I say make your own luck, I kind of mean like putting yourself in the right place at the right time as much as possible. So when I was in UX Academy, I didn't finish the program. So I took a really long time also. I not only didn't complete the program, I was like really not on the correct timeline. But at the time when I interviewed at Gamma, I had like almost two portfolio projects done, or like capstones complete. I was starting to work on the third, and like I had one case study up on the landing page, and like that was it. But I had my website link in my Twitter bio, and I was like doom scrolling one night, and I saw a tweet from a guy that was like, "Hey, we're hiring our second product designer. Here's what we're looking for, open to like early career applicants." And so I didn't know about Twitter's bookmarking feature at the time, so I liked the tweet so I could come back to it. And John, who is now my CPO, my chief product officer, went to my portfolio on Twitter. He like clicked on the link in my bio, and then he cold emailed me and said, "Hey, like saw your portfolio, really liked it. Do you want to chat? We're hiring." And I was like, "Holy shit, yes." I was like completely gobsmacked, as I'm sure all of you can imagine receiving that email. I was like, wearing my pajamas, going downstairs to the laundry room. Like it was like a very like unglamorous experience. And so of course I emailed him immediately and was like, yes, like I do want to talk, like whatever, just let me know. I'm always free. I have no job. And I was not like ready to apply for jobs at that time. I had not prepped interviewing at all. I didn't have a portfolio presentation. I didn't have a complete portfolio. I didn't even have like 2 complete projects, right? And like I still got the job. So I had put myself in the right place at the right time by like having that link in my portfolio, by like engaging with things like online and on social media, and like doing all the networking that I could. And like me seeing that tweet when I did and like not knowing what the bookmark feature is luck, but like I had done enough to make it so that when I had that stroke of luck, I was able to like capitalize on it as best as possible. So I think that being in the right place at the right time and like being open is more important than being ready, if you know what I mean. Because you can make yourself ready, like you can push yourself to be ready, but you can't like put yourself somewhere that you weren't, and like not miss an opportunity that passed by. And so the other thing that I really believe is that you should know your unfair advantage. And this comes from like when I was in college, I listened to the startup podcast, and something in the first episode that gets said to like a guy who's trying to pitch his startup to an investor is like, what is your unfair advantage? Why should I choose you like over all these other people who want my money, right? And so I thought about that a lot in the context of me and my job search, because I came in without design experience. Some people have like graphic design backgrounds or, you know, industrial design or like research backgrounds. And I didn't have any of that. I was a barista who had studied history. So I like had read a lot and I like could make coffee and like talk to people. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that if you put me in an interview where I can talk to a real human, then I can get the job. So basically, I was really confident in my like yapping abilities. Like you may be able to tell I'm a bit of a yapper. And so I knew that that was my strength, and that the second I had an opportunity to talk to a real person, I needed to lean on that as much as possible, because my hard skills were not like comparable to someone who had done like digital design or who had done like graphic or web design. So I needed to really sell my other abilities, my soft skills, because that's where I knew that I was like spiky. And that's the strategy I took, and like it paid off because like I did get the job, and I got it largely on, I mean, my skills and everything I had learned and the work that I had done and the work that I'd put in. But I knew that I was going to be able to articulate my story, my thought process, and my vision in a way that maybe other people weren't going to be able to, despite their hard skills. And that was going to be the thing that won me the job. And it was. So if you're like me and you don't have a lot of hard skills or like background, and you're maybe feeling a little self-conscious about that, then work on your story, work on pitching yourself and making yourself feel like, you know, I really want to work with this person. I really love how this person thinks. Like, I really love how this person sees the world. And yeah, I think just be kind to yourself. It's hard. And don't worry about what other people are doing and what their timeline is, because they have like really different factors than you. I didn't apply for any other jobs. Sometimes I get asked that because like I wasn't ready to apply at the time. I just like had an opportunity and seized it. But I think that if that hadn't happened, I probably would have been in the position of a lot of other people where I had to apply a lot. So yeah, just seize every opportunity you can, regardless of whether or not you think you're ready, because you're probably more ready than you think you are. And if you're not, you can make yourself ready. Just like stay up all night. But yeah, so that's what I think. That's what I usually tell people. when I talk to them, because I've definitely talked to a lot of people who maybe feel a little bit more self-conscious about their own abilities. And, you know, we all have strengths. You just have to like do some soul searching to like find out what yours is. And then once you find it, make that your North Star anytime you talk to someone. It can work.
I think that's really great advice. And like, I don't know, the more that I talk to people across all kinds of industries, I hear a lot that folks are just like, nobody knows what they're doing, you know, and, or at least not in the sense, not in the way that you think they do, you know. So if there's something that you want to do, and like you said, you don't necessarily think you're ready, like just do it. You'll be fine. You'll figure it out. You know,
Yeah,
that's
totally.
anyway.
I have like multiple calendar events on my calendar from like 2021. Sometimes I look back on them because they're really, really funny. Where I had blocked out time before like my interviews to like interview prep, and they're literally called like scream and prepare to talk to John. So like don't worry, like everyone's freaking out. It's just how it is. And like as someone who's been on the other side of the interview panel now, because I do participate in our hiring panels. Like I've participated in every hiring panel that has happened after me. We now have a design team of 5, almost 6. We just hired someone else, and we're hiring a very senior role as well. And so I've participated, and because of where I was in my career when I joined, I have participated only in panels for people who are more senior than me and who have more experience than me. And so I think like if you feel like you bombed an interview, don't worry. I've seen people who have like a lot of experience also bomb an interview. And like, as long as you have an ability to like handle that with grace and, you know, learn from that experience, then you're the better for it. I actually got this really good piece of advice from a mentor when I was going through my career transition. He said, just because you got rejected doesn't mean that you aren't making progress and that you're not doing things that are actionable. And so I thought about that a lot, and I still think about that sometimes. I think it's great advice. I think everyone should keep that in mind. Just because you're not like seeing the results that you want to see doesn't mean that you aren't like doing valuable things and like making progress in your journey. It's all like, it's very like this situation.
I think that is also very good advice. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Alison. This is great. I think your story really resonated with a lot of folks. I thought Gamma was absolutely awesome. Like, I'm definitely going to use it the next time I need to create something for myself.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's great. Being on the other side is really funny. I've been to a lot of these live stream things. And if you do add me on LinkedIn, make sure you add a note, because otherwise I will probably not accept you and I won't know who you are. So yeah, great to meet you all.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. I hope you check out Gamma. Come join a Design Lab course. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody. Thank you.